My name is Claire Whitmore, I'm 17, and this isn't the summer I thought I'd have. After my mom's sudden decision to move us from downtown Toronto to the sleepy coastal town of Ashwood Bay, everything familiar vanished. Friends, routines, even my last year at my old high school. She said it was for a fresh start after my dad left, but I could tell something else was eating at her. She looked over her shoulder too often. Jumped at phone calls. Packed in a rush. The house she inherited, a creaky Victorian nestled at the edge of Ashwood's weathered cliffs, didn't feel like a fresh start. It felt haunted. Not in a ghosts and rattling chains way, but in the way the air held its breath when you walked through the front door. A house full of unspoken things. It belonged to my great-aunt Alice. I'd never met her. According to Mom, she was a recluse, the weird one in the family, and no one had heard from her in over a decade until the lawyer called to say she'd died, and left everything to us. Everything. The first week in Ashwood was suffocating. The townspeople were polite but distant. At the small corner store, I heard whispers about the Whitmore girl, and caught glances when I passed. I tried to keep to myself, walking the shoreline in the evenings or sketching in the turret room that overlooked the sea. That's where I found it. A small door behind a rotting bookcase on the third floor. It was barely 3 feet tall. Curious, I pulled the shelf aside and crawled in, brushing past cobwebs. The attic was dark, except for a single beam of sunlight slicing through a cracked window. Dust floated like ghosts in the air. And there, half buried in old cloth and cardboard boxes, was a wooden chest with iron hinges. It was locked. But next to it, tucked beneath a bundle of yellowing letters, was a key and an envelope. It was addressed to me. Not to Claire Whitmore, but to my heir. The handwriting was elegant, sharp, almost angry. I opened it with trembling fingers. If you're reading this, you've found the place I knew one day you would. You don't know me, but I've watched you. Seen the strength in your spirit. The truth is, our family is not what you think. And you are not who you believe you are. Open the chest. Trust no one. Especially not your mother. My pulse thundered in my ears. I turned the key in the chest, heart thudding, breath short. The lock clicked. Inside was a leather-bound journal, brittle with age, a bundle of photographs tied with velvet ribbon, and a small ornate mirror that shimmered faintly, even in the dim light. As I touched the mirror, something in the air shifted. The house creaked beneath my feet like it was listening. From downstairs, I heard the front door slam. Then my mother's voice, sharper than usual, panicked. "Claire? Where are you? Did you go in the attic?" I slammed the chest shut, heart pounding. There was something in that letter that terrified me more than I could explain. Trust no one. Especially not your mother. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house felt louder, more intentional. The mirror from the attic sat wrapped in a towel at the back of my closet, though part of me was sure it didn't like being hidden. And the journal. The journal was under my pillow. I couldn't explain why, but having it close made me feel safer. At breakfast, Mom was different. She didn't ask how I slept. Didn't mention the attic. Just pushed scrambled eggs around her plate and stared out the window, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. A ring she hadn't worn in months. I tried to keep my voice steady. Did you know Aunt Alice left a bunch of old things behind? Letters and stuff. Her eyes flicked to mine. You shouldn't be poking around up there. That house is full of unstable places. Things best left alone. Unstable. I repeated. Like cursed. Her fork clattered onto the plate. That's not funny, Claire. Neither of us laughed. Later that afternoon, I went to the only place in town that didn't make me feel like an alien. The library. It was small, quiet, and run by a girl not much older than me named Rowan. He wore oversized sweaters and had the kind of silent confidence that made you listen even when he didn't speak. The first time I came in, he barely looked up. But today, when I placed the journal on the counter, he glanced at it, then back at me. That's not just some old diary, is it? I blinked. Excuse me. He shrugged, rubbing the edge of the leather binding with his thumb. This symbol. He pointed to a faint mark burned into the corner. A circle with 3 intersecting lines inside. It's alchemical. Old. Like really old. You don't see it unless you're looking. I hesitated. Do you know what it means? Rowan hesitated for a beat. It's a seal of guardianship. Protectors used it. From what? I'm not exactly sure. But it's not a good sign when it shows up in random attics. I wasn't sure whether to feel scared or impressed. How do you know all this? He gave a half smile. I like secrets. Books have more of them than people do. Something about the way he said it made me trust him. That night, back at the house, I opened the journal. The entries were strange. Part diary, part code. Aunt Alice wrote in loops and symbols, but occasionally switched to English. Her tone shifted depending on the entry. Sometimes she sounded like a scientist. Other times like someone slipping into madness. The mirror listens. It doesn't lie, but it shows truths in fragments. The bloodline carries the gift. Claire must be told only when it begins. I've seen the reflection shift. The darkness is almost here. Almost here? I ran my hand over the pages, stopping at a loose one tucked between them. A photograph slipped out. It was black and white, faded, but unmistakable. A girl, standing in the rose garden behind the house. About my age. Her eyes were wide. Terrified. The mirror stood behind her. But here's the thing. The girl in the photo wasn't Alice. It was my mother. And behind her, in the mirror's reflection, was something watching. That night I pulled the mirror from the closet. It was no bigger than a dinner plate, framed in silver with small carvings that looked almost like letters. When I turned it toward me, the glass rippled slightly, like water touched by wind. I didn't see my reflection. I saw the garden. Our garden. But older. Overgrown. The roses were taller, wilder, and someone, stood in the middle. Wearing the same charcoal blazer I'd worn 2 days ago. It was me. But I wasn't moving. I wasn't breathing. And behind me in the mirror was a shadow. I dropped it with a gasp. The mirror didn't break, but my mind nearly did. From downstairs, I heard Mom's voice. Faint. Urgent. Claire. Are you in your room? I quickly kicked the mirror under the bed and pulled the covers around me. She knocked once. Don't go into the attic again, she said through the door. Please. I mean it. I didn't answer. But I whispered into the darkness. What are you afraid I'll find? The next morning, I pretended everything was normal. I poured cereal. Avoided eye contact. Told Mom I had library stuff to work on. She just nodded absently, clearly distracted. Her phone had rung 3 times before 9 a.m., and every time she took the call outside, voice low, eyes scanning the horizon like someone expecting bad news. I walked to the library, though my heart was still in the attic and my mind stuck in the mirror. Rowan was already behind the counter when I arrived, flipping through a tattered folklore book with a cracked spine and tiny handwritten notes in the margins. When he saw me, he gestured silently toward the back corner. Our corner now. I brought something, I said, pulling the mirror from my backpack, wrapped in a scarf. He didn't ask questions, just cleared a space and helped me unwrap it. Okay, he squinted. That's definitely not from IKEA. He ran a fingertip along the silver edge, then frowned. There's something etched here. Faint. Wait. Hold this up to the light. We tilted the mirror, and sure enough, a barely visible script ran along the frames inside. In shadows we reflect. In silence we reveal. Do you think it's cursed? I asked. Rowan gave me a look. Everything in this town probably is. That afternoon, Rowan and I walked to the cliffs behind the house. I needed to show him the garden. Except, there wasn't one. Where the roses had been in the mirror, tall, overgrown, wild, was now just grass. Uneven dirt. A few scraggly bushes at best. But, it's here, I insisted, heart pounding. It was here. I saw it. Rowan stepped carefully over a root. Claire, if there was a full rose garden here, you'd see remnants. Beds. bricks, anything. But in the mirror, it's alive. I turned in a slow circle. It's like I saw a memory. Or a future. Rowan crouched, brushing away dirt and twigs until his hand hit something solid. Stone. He looked up at me. Found a border wall. We cleared more away, barely an outline, but it was real. A garden had been here. Just long ago. Forgotten. What if the mirror shows what others can't? I whispered. What if it's not broken, just awake? Rowan didn't answer right away. He stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. Then softly, Claire, that journal you brought? I went digging last night. And he looked at me seriously. There was a Whitmore girl. Born in 1872. Her name was Clara. Like you but different spelling. Everyone said she disappeared. Vanished in the garden behind this house at age 17. Some thought she drowned. Others said she just went through. Through what? Rowan exhaled slowly. I think the mirror might be a door. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the turret room, the journal open in my lap. Outside, wind lashed the glass, and the waves below crashed louder than usual, as if something stirred beneath them. The mirror sat beside me. I didn't look at it. Until the whisper came. Claire. It wasn't a voice out loud. It was inside. Like a memory that didn't belong to me. I spun toward the mirror. The glass shimmered. Then cleared. The garden again. Only this time, the version of me in the reflection turned. Looked directly at me. Her eyes were hollow. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. And behind her something moved. Dark. Shapeless. A shadow. Reaching for her shoulder. I grabbed the mirror and shoved it into the drawer, slamming it shut. Then I ran to the hallway. Straight into Mom. She grabbed my arms. Frantic. What were you doing in there? I tried to push past her, but she wouldn't let go. You've seen it, haven't you? She whispered. The mirror. The garden. Claire, you have to listen to me. No, I snapped. You lied. You knew something was wrong with this house. With me. Why didn't you ever tell me about Clara? Or Aunt Alice? Or what happened to you in that photo? Her face paled. Because I hoped you wouldn't be like them. Because I hoped I'd stopped it. Stopped what? She looked at me then, really looked at me. Her eyes filled with a fear I hadn't seen before. Not panic. Recognition. The bloodline. The door. It opens. Once every generation. And then she whispered. And it's opening for you. After Mom's words, the house no longer felt like mine. Not that it ever had. The walls seemed tighter. Shadows longer. Even the air had changed, as if the house had been holding its breath for years, and now, finally, it had exhaled. That night, I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the journal open, the mirror beside me. The candle I'd lit flickered wildly, even though no window was open. The air was still, but the flame danced like it sensed something coming. I read Aunt Alice's final entry again. The mirror is a threshold. It does not open with hands, but with understanding. Clara didn't know. I didn't know. But Claire, maybe she will. I didn't know what I was supposed to understand, but something told me I was close. At school the next day, I barely lasted 2 classes before faking a stomachache and slipping out. I needed Rowan. He was in the library as usual, reading about ritual mirrors and ancestral crossings. His desk was covered with coffee-stained pages, red string, yes, really, and a stack of books with titles like Portals of the Mind and Occult Topographies of the 19th Century. When he saw my face, he stood immediately. Claire. What happened? I sat down. My mom knows. She's been through it, or saw it, years ago. She said the mirror opens every generation. That it's opening for me. He didn't blink. Then we have to figure out what's on the other side. You're very calm about all this. I told you. I like secrets. His smile faltered. But I don't like what this one's doing to you. That was the first time I felt the air shift between us. Not from magic or the mirror, but something real. Something human. That afternoon, we returned to the house. Rowan had brought supplies, salt for protection, a small compass for energy fields, and a small Polaroid camera. If mirrors are portals, he explained, they mess with magnetism. If the compass spins, we'll know something's active. And cameras might capture things the eye can't. I didn't tell him I'd been dreaming about the garden every night. In each dream I was running through it, but the roses weren't red. They were black. And they whispered when I brushed past them. Things like, "Claire, we remember you. It's your turn now. You belong to us." We set the mirror in the turret room, drew the curtains, and lit the same candle I'd used in the attic. I touched the glass. It rippled, like before, but this time it pulled. I gasped, pulling back. My fingers were cold, even though the air in the room was warm. Rowan grabbed the compass. "It's spinning." Then I picked up the Polaroid and snapped a photo of the mirror. We waited for it to develop. When the image appeared, Rowan went pale. In the photo, I stood alone, but in the mirror, there was someone beside me. A girl in a white dress. Her face was blurred, but her eyes were mine. And behind her that same figure. A tall shadow, arms too long. Watching. Waiting. That night, Mom finally told the truth. She sat at the foot of my bed like she used to when I was little, only this time, her voice shook with memory. Clara was my cousin. I used to visit this house every summer. One day she disappeared. Just gone. But the day before, she'd been obsessed with a mirror in the attic. I remember her whispering to it. She paused. And then one night, I saw her in the garden. Except the garden was gone. She was standing where it used to be, staring at me, her mouth moving like she was screaming, but there was no sound. I ran. I never came back. "Until now," I whispered. She nodded, eyes distant. When Aunt Alice died and left us the house, I knew it meant something. I hoped maybe the curse had passed. But I was wrong. I sat forward. "Why me?" She looked at me then with something close to heartbreak. "Because you're the first Whitmore girl in this house since Clara. The bloodline calls. And the mirror answers." Later, I couldn't sleep. I returned to the turret room alone. The mirror waited. I lit the candle, closed the door, sat cross-legged like Aunt Alice had, and whispered, "If you're going to take me, show me where I'm going." The glass shimmered, then blurred. I saw the rose garden again. Only this time, I was walking through it. Not dream me. Now me. The mirror wasn't showing a memory or a vision. It was showing live. It was a window. To somewhere I wasn't. Then I looked behind mirror me. The girl in white was following me. She raised her hand and touched my shoulder. And that's when I screamed. Because I felt it. Something cold gripped my real shoulder. I spun. Nothing there. But in the mirror. She was still standing behind me. Smiling now. I didn't tell Rowan what I saw in the mirror that night. I didn't tell him that I felt the girl's hand. That I still felt it hours later, a cold mark on my shoulder, like frostbitten skin that wouldn't warm. I didn't tell him that her smile hadn't looked cruel. It looked welcoming. Like she knew something I didn't. The next day was gray and silent, the sky stretched tight with clouds like a canvas waiting to break. Mom stayed in bed most of the morning, claiming a migraine. But I heard her crying softly behind the door. I almost knocked. Almost asked her to tell me everything. Instead, I turned away. There were some doors I was beginning to understand that had to be opened alone. I met Rowan behind the school, near the old war memorial that everyone ignored. "I'm going in," I told him without preamble. He frowned. "Into the mirror?" I nodded. He ran a hand through his hair, the wind tugging at his sweater sleeves. "Claire, you don't know what's on the other side. That's the point." I handed him the journal. "If I don't come back, you'll know where I went. Maybe even how to bring me back." He stared at the leather cover, reluctant to take it. You don't have to do this. I smiled, small and steady. I think I always did. At dusk, I returned to the turret room. The mirror sat where I'd left it, waiting. This time, I brought 3 things. A candle. A silver key I'd found hidden in Aunt Alice's desk. And my mother's necklace, one she used to wear when I was a child, with a moonstone that caught the light in a strange way. I sat in front of the mirror, lit the candle, and whispered, "Clara, Aunt Alice, whoever you are, I'm ready." The mirror fogged, then shimmered, then split. Not cracked, not broken, opened, like a door, right down the center. Inside, I saw the rose garden, bathed in twilight. And I saw her, the girl in the white dress. She stepped forward, stopping just before the edge of the mirror. She held out her hand. I didn't hesitate. I touched the glass. It felt warm. Then, I stepped through. The air inside the mirror was thick, like walking underwater. But I could breathe. The garden was more vivid than ever. Blooms I didn't recognize, vines growing in spiral patterns, and the scent of something like rain and ash. The girl stood beside me now. Not behind me. Closer. When she spoke, it wasn't aloud. It was in my thoughts. "Claire Whitmore. You are the last of us." I frowned. "Of who?" She turned to face me. Her eyes were exactly mine, but older, deeper. "Of the Watchers. The bloodline that remembers. Every generation one is called. One sees the truth behind the veil." "What truth?" She looked at the sky. It rippled like the mirror. And behind it, I saw flashes. People. Moments. Whole lifetimes. A child on a cliff, watching a shadow rise from the sea. A woman crying into a book full of spells. A boy setting fire to a mirror with salt-ringed hands. And Clara, my Clara, stepping into this place as I had. "This is the in-between," the girl said. "The place where memories live when they're too painful to keep. It feeds on forgotten things. On lies. On silence." "Then why am I here?" She smiled. "To break the silence." Suddenly, the garden trembled. The sky darkened. A low growl echoed from the horizon, and the ground beneath us cracked like dry skin. "Something's coming," I whispered. She nodded. "The shadow. The one that took Clara. That chased Alice. That your mother ran from." The girl took my hand. "But you didn't run." And just like that, I understood. The mirror wasn't a curse. It was a test. Those who feared it lost themselves. But those who faced it changed it. "I want to go back," I said. "Then remember this. You are the door. What you believe becomes what you open." She stepped back, fading into the vines, her voice the last thing I heard. "Don't forget who you are, Claire. Or it will take your place." I awoke on the floor of the turret room. The candle had burned to a puddle. The mirror was whole again. But something was different. I was different. When I looked in the mirror this time, I saw only myself. And behind me, the roses were blooming. Downstairs, Mom was waiting. She stood slowly as I entered, tears already in her eyes. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. I hugged her for a long time, then pulled back and placed the necklace in her hand. "You didn't lose me," I said quietly. "But it's time we stop pretending we never lost them." She nodded. And for the first time since we arrived in Ashwood, she looked less afraid. The next day, Rowan met me at the library. "Did it work?" he asked. I handed him the mirror. It was just glass now. Still. Silent. But something flickered in its center. A single petal. Black. Velvet. Real. His eyes widened. "Claire, what does it mean?" I smiled faintly. "It means the mirror's closed, for now." I turned toward the garden path behind the house, where the first roses had begun to bloom again. But as I walked away, the mirror, left on the table, caught the light. Just for a second. And in its reflection, a girl in white watched me go. Still smiling.